YouTube world. My name is Louise, and you've tuned into my channel, Let's Talk About It, a mental health awareness channel. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about a subject which is a little bit different, maybe a little more unique, but I'm sure is relevant to a lot of people, even right at this moment. I'm going to be talking about taking care of my mental health, your own mental health, when you have a loved one in a serious critical condition or in hospital long term for life-threatening injury or illness. And I'm going to be sharing some of my personal story in relation to this topic. I want to apologize in advance if this video is a little rambly. This is still quite fresh and new for me, so I still haven't quite processed everything myself. That's probably going to take quite a few years, but I really wanted to make this video and share because this was something totally new for me. And I think it's really easy to forget about your own mental health when you're caring for a loved one, when you have a loved one in a real vulnerable position. So I'm going to start off by talking about my story from my point of view, telling you a little bit about what happened. So about 6 months ago, both my mom and my dad were involved in a serious accident. I'm not going to go into details, but the result was that they both had third-degree burns to approximately 40% of their bodies. They were in the ICU in a critical condition on life support for about a week and a half. They had several surgeries, one marathon surgery to get rid of all the burnt skin, replace it with what's called BioBrain. This is a substance which kind of tricks the body into thinking it has skin while they work on a full proper recovery. They came off life support. They started to breathe on their own again, talk, and then they were moved into a burns unit where they were treated for about 4 months, where they had skin graft operations, several of them. My mom had a small amputation of part of her pinky finger, and where they learned to walk again, feed themselves again, and try and function again. So it's been a long journey. It is still going. Burns injuries in particular take a very long time to recover from, up to 18 months. And it has been hard, no doubt about it, for all involved. I can't talk about it from my parents' perspective, and I'm not about to drag them onto my YouTube channel. I can only talk about it from my own perspective. And I'm gonna be more specific now and talk about taking care of how I took care of my own mental health during this time. And I hope that sharing these stories and these things that I did can maybe help people in a similar position. When I found out my parents had been in this accident and were on life support, critical condition in the ICU, there was a lot of adrenaline involved. The first 72 hours were crazy. Despite all of that, when I got to see a social worker at the hospital, the first thing I said was, I want to talk to a counselor or a psychologist, and I want to have one available for during this time. And I can't recommend it enough. You didn't need to ask me twice. I didn't need to question it twice. I knew that was something straight away that I needed to have access to. I think it's so important for anyone dealing with a situation like this. Even if you think you're doing well, trauma has a way of showing up down the line. It's a long process and you don't know what's going to happen. So try the best you can to make sure you have someone professional available to talk to. And it really does make a difference that they're professional, because what you're going through is so unique. You want someone professional to talk to who knows about how the brain works, how trauma and grief and all of these things work. It was the first thing I did. I knew straight away that was something I wanted. I can't recommend it enough. The next thing, as far as my mental health during this time, that stands out to me was, I guess, my attitude or my thoughts. While they were in ICU during that first week and a half, we had a lot of different people that we spoke to or that spoke to us, from doctors, nurses, professors, social workers, to like friends and family. And all of these people had a really wide range of ways they would kind of address the situation and talk to us about it. Some people were kind of very positive, or as positive they could be about it. They were telling us things like they survived the first 48 hours, and that says a lot. That's a really huge step and a positive sign. They would say things like doctors would tell us, we've treated people much older than them with much worse burns than them and gotten them fully rehabilitated. So there's no reason that your parents can't make it. You'd have people that would say something kind of in between, where they would say, the injuries themselves we can treat, but infection is a really big thing with burn patients, and it's just a matter of luck if they get a really bad infection, and we can't treat it. And then we'd have other people that would sit us down and say, listen, your parents have really serious life-threatening injuries. They're in a critical condition. We're going to do the best we can. But basically, not using these words, they would tell us that it doesn't look good. And I really struggled internally with how to have my mindset. Part of me was like, should I prepare for the worst? Should I bear that in mind and prepare for it, so that if the worst doesn't happen, maybe it doesn't hit me so hard? Or should I try and stay positive? Should I look at what they have done and what can happen in the future? Should I think about when they do come off life support, when I can talk to them again and they can talk to me? Should I think about when I can hug them again? It was like this tennis match in my head, because I didn't know what was the right way to think. And I think it's different for everyone. But I set myself down and I talked about it to myself. And what I kind of came up with was that there was no amount of preparing myself for the worst that I could do that would actually prepare me for the worst. There was nothing that I could say or do in the present that would stop the grief or make it easier if the worst did happen. There was nothing I could do unless it actually did happen. It would have hit me just as hard whether I'd prepared myself or not. But when I was thinking about the positive steps, the positive signs, and what could happen in the future, it at least calmed me down in that moment and in the present, so that I could support them better, and so that I could concentrate on the day, even maybe just take a walk or do something not related to the accident. And it helped me in the present. So I just said, there's nothing I can do for that future eventuality. There's nothing I can do to prepare myself. It's just making me anxious and scared in the present, but I can help my present self by concentrating as much as I could on the positive signs and on the positive progress. So I tried to go with that wherever I could. It helped me in the moment. It helped me sleep. It helped me concentrate on just little things that were nice in my day, like enjoying my breakfast or taking a walk and enjoying the sun. That was for me personally. I think everyone's different. But for me, the very best thing to do was to concentrate on the positive signs, try and block out the prepare for the worst thing, so that I could help myself be calmer in that present moment. In kind of the first few weeks of my parents being in hospital, we got a lot of kind of advice from social workers and nurses and random people who I never really figured out who they were, about how to like look after yourself during that time. I've got like 20 pamphlets about looking after yourself while you're processing grief and trauma, which it is for you as well as the person that's going through it. You're also grieving, you're also dealing with trauma. Um, and they all kind of said the same thing, like, make sure you're eating well and sleeping well and getting exercise, all of that kind of thing. And I looked at the list and I'm like, well, that's all well and good, but I feel like I need an instructional guide on how to get there right now. because what I was going through was just so emotionally overwhelming, and there felt like there was so much that needed to be done at the same time as I just wanted to stay by my parents' side, that getting to the point of how to do that became really complicated. Just taking care of your basic needs, I felt like needed a manual of like, how do I get exercise right now? So I wanted to share some of the things that I did end up doing to help me get to those basic steps. And the first one was that I made sure that anyone who offered any help, be they a professional, a service, a family friend, neighbor, anyone, I said yes. I accepted any help that anyone offered and asked for help in addition to that. And people were really willing to help out, which is really lovely, to have so many people willing to support and help out. And I think people really do in situations like this. They want to help and they all kind of come forward because people are really lovely most of the time, and especially in situations like this. So I just didn't want to be afraid to ask for help and accept help. I had people who said, do you want us to make you dinner? Do you want us to make you food? Do you want us to mow the lawn, get the mail, look after the cat? I was like, yes, 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 please. Thank you so much. And yes, please. Because without it, I just wouldn't have been able to look after myself and get those basic needs done of sleeping and eating and exercising. There would have just been too much on my plate in addition to how emotionally overwhelmed I was. So definitely accept any help that is offered and ask for any help that you feel like you need, even with just really small everyday tasks. They can become really overwhelming and really stressful in a time like this. So ask for help. Accept help because it's not so stressful for the person offering help, and kind of delegate it so it's not all dumped on one person and then becomes stressful for them. I kind of became a master of delegation in those first few weeks. But yeah, it's ask for help, accept help. Help is good. I have my little notes here on what I want to talk about so I can get my head straight. The other thing that I did that was a major thing to help me manage my own needs physically and mentally was to plan my hospital visits. And it was really easy to just want to be at the hospital the whole time. Definitely for the first few days, I was there pretty much all day. You can't do that for 4 months. It's exhausting if you're not the one being treated. It's a lot. Don't do that to yourself. You can't be there probably to support the person emotionally. So I planned my visits and I knew, all right, I was going to go at this time and I wanted to leave by this time. I also knew that whatever time I wanted to leave at wasn't going to happen. It was always going to be half an hour or an hour later. I could try my very best intentions, but 90% of the time, it was never going to be the time that I planned to leave. It was going to be later, so I planned for that too. I said, all right, we're aiming to be gone by 6 p.m., knowing that it was going to be 7 p.m. I'm going to put the 6 p.m. there to allow that extra hour. So plan your hospital visits, know what time you want to leave, know it's going to take longer, plan for that too, if that makes sense. It made sense to me. And this would allow me to be able to go back, have dinner, relax, and unwind a little bit, and then still get to sleep at a reasonable time. And that was very important in me getting enough sleep and proper sleep where I wasn't really anxious or wound up from something that I'd just seen or dealt with at the hospital. Particularly for me, because I know if I can't sleep, I can't drive. If I can't drive, I can't get to the hospital. So I always made sure I planned my visits, knew when I was going to leave, knew it was going to take longer, planned for that too. I have something I felt was important to this story or this video that I wanted to share, and I don't have any advice on it or anything that I learned at the time, but it's something that stood out for me on this journey, that I wanted to share about, and that was the kind of emotional role swap that happened between me and my parents during this time. And I think this is somewhat unique to a situation where it is your parents specifically in a hospital. But it was quite difficult in a lot of ways, having to become like the emotional rock for them when I was used to always having them as my emotional rock. If something was bad or something felt wrong or if I needed to vent, it would be them that I'd talk to. And I found this particularly difficult with my dad because he's always been a rock and very level headed, and all of a sudden it was a complete swap, where he was getting very emotional and struggling with things a lot, and trying to support him through that, and then not having someone to talk to about it because he's the person that I normally talk to about it, or my mom is the person that I normally talk to about it. But then I'd have to be the emotional rock for them. So that was really challenging. I remember times where I'd be like trying to feed them their dinner, because that's nicer than the nurses having to do it. And the nurses also get really busy sometimes, so we'd often come in to like feed them dinner. Um, and I would be like trying to feed him, and he would be crying over something, and I'm like, well, it's nice that you're crying that bit over there, but you need to eat your chicken. Um, and we would use humor a lot to help us cope, all of us, whole family. Um, it didn't change, so it was really difficult nonetheless to have that emotional role swap. I have no advice on that. I just felt like I wanted to share that. That was a part of the story that felt relevant. This is another thing that I'm not sure I have any kind of advice for, but I'd like to share because it stands out for me. Um, my parents' journey was very rocky, very bumpy, up and down, which is exactly what everyone said it would be. And I found my journey also very rocky, bumpy, up and down, not necessarily at the same time as theirs. There would be days where I'd feel like I was Superwoman. I've got this. I can look after their things. I can look after me. I can look after them. I've got this. And there were some days where I'm like, I do not have this. I'm really struggling. Um, I remember in particular one day where I was at the hospital. It was getting towards time to leave. Actually, it was way past time to leave. And I was like, yeah, I really gotta go. And Dad was having a particularly hard day. He was feeling very emotional. And I kind of said, okay, Dad, I'm gonna go. And he looked upset. I'm like, do you want me to stay? And he's like, yeah, I feel better when you stay. And I just, in that moment, emotionally collapsed. I said to him, I was like, okay, just hang on, I just got to go text someone. And I went to the waiting room and I sat on the floor and cried because it was just so exhausting. And I felt really bad that I was sitting there crying when my dad really wanted me to be with him. I was like, I should love him enough to like want to be with him, but I was just so frustrated trying to take care of both of their emotional needs and mine at the same time. There were days where it was just overwhelming. And you would expect it to be, particularly in perspective. Of course, there were days where it's going to be emotionally overwhelming. I'm not sure I have any advice on that, but I do remember it. It does stand out to me, that moment in particular, and I just wanted to share that too. So I'm now going to talk about two things that I wasn't really prepared for. Not that I was prepared for any of this, but that very much came as like a shock to me, that I was surprised how I reacted or that I had this reaction. Everything else I kind of, if somebody had thrown this situation at me hypothetically, I would have been like, yeah, that seems like how I would react. But these two things were unexpected. And the first one was that after about 3 months, about 3 months after the accident, 3 months of them being in hospital, I had this week where I was just really anxious out of nowhere. I couldn't sleep. I was emotional. I was, feeling physical symptoms of anxiety. I was like feeling sick. My stomach was weird. Um, I was getting headaches and all sorts of weird things. Which I was like, why is this happening now? Because I felt like coping quite well so far with everything, and out of nowhere, I just had all of this anxiety and panic. And conveniently, I had an appointment scheduled with my counselor at the end of that week, and I learned that that's quite typical for kind of the stress and the trauma of something to like this to show up about 3 months down the line. Apparently, for the first 3 months, you can go into kind of survival mode. Um, so it's something to bear in mind, that maybe, about 3 months down the line, you might start to feel effects out of nowhere, of anxiety and trauma, and PTSD and that kind of thing. Which is also why it's good to have a counselor or professional lined up to talk to, um, for when you do maybe start feeling those effects. I wasn't quite expecting that. I was very worried at the time why all of a sudden I had this really bad anxiety, until I did see my counselor at the end of that week, and she said, "Yeah, that's really normal." So I just wanted to mention that that was very unexpected for me. The last thing that I wanted to talk about in this video that was also unexpected for me in this journey, was about my parents when they got discharged and they came home. And I don't know if this would be relevant to everyone. I think it's only relevant if you're going to be in the house with your loved one when they come home, or if you're going to be a carer for them. Um, but I kind of always expected my parents coming home to be like a really exciting thing, that they get to be home and sleep in their own bed and eat whatever they want and cuddle their cat and that kind of thing. And it was, but it was also very scary for me. And I wasn't expecting it at all. It wasn't until the morning my mom got discharged that I kind of started to feel this, and I felt very scared, very anxious, because uh, they were going from being in a hospital with nurses and medical equipment and everyone that knew what to do and how to look after them, to being at home with me. And I am not, I have a first aid certificate many, many years ago. I'm not medically trained, and all of a sudden I was completely responsible for their well being. And that was very scary and very daunting. And I wasn't expecting it. I remember that day feeling like, I don't want to leave my apartment. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready to be responsible totally for their well-being, make sure that they don't fall down the stairs. I started to worry about, like, what if something happened, what if they got an infection, I didn't realize it, they went into septic shock, what if something happened in the middle of the night, what if I couldn't look after them properly. And that was very scary, and I just didn't think about it before. And I think maybe if I'd given myself some more time to comprehend that, think about it, and talk about it with them, maybe it would have been a bit easier. I think it still would have been a bit of a shock. But definitely my expectations for how I was going to feel that day and what I actually did feel was totally different. And it ended up being okay. Um, we coped, we got through it, nobody fell down the stairs. um, but I just didn't think about that stuff before, and I kind of wish I had. And I am going to post another video, probably in a week or two, talking about the next stage of the journey, talking about being a carer and looking after your mental health when you're a carer, because that's also important too. But I just wanted to mention that I felt that was more relevant to this video about the day they came home. So there we go. I hope that wasn't too rambly. It's very hard to try and get my thoughts together on something that happened so recently, and it's a journey that's still happening. But I really, like I said, I really wanted to post this video. I really felt it was important to share. So thank you guys for watching. And if you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. This feels like a weird video to be like, did you enjoy this? If you want to hear me talk about this kind of stuff more, if you want to hear about my mental health ramblings, please like and subscribe. And I'll be posting more mental health videos on a wide range of topics, weekly, bi-weekly. Thank you guys for watching again, and have the best day possible, and I'll see you next time.